Most people no longer hear their own thoughts clearly, not because they are unintelligent, but because interruption became their default environment. Notifications before reflection, reaction before intention, algorithms before awareness. And slowly, human beings stopped listening to themselves long enough to recognize what their real signal even sounds like anymore. This is the hidden crisis of the modern world. Not only distraction, internal fragmentation. Maybe you already know this feeling. Opening your phone without thinking. Switching between tasks until your mind feels scattered. Feeling mentally exhausted despite never truly focusing deeply on anything meaningful.
It's corrupted.
Trying to rest. While part of your nervous system still feels pulled towards stimulation. This is not weakness. It is cognitive overload. The modern world does not only compete for your attention, it competes for your inner signal. This is where the monolith appears, not as a ruler, not as a fantasy, but as a symbol of internal stability inside chaotic systems. A structure that does not collapse every time the environment changes. A presence capable of remaining grounded while everything around it accelerates endlessly. The monolith does not react impulsively. It observes, filters, waits. It remains still long enough to distinguish signal from noise. This is the first principle of the Monolith Protocol. A mind constantly interrupted cannot hear its own direction clearly. Most people are overwhelmed not because they lack intelligence, but because too many external systems are pulling their cognition in conflicting directions at the same time. Too many opinions, too many artificial urgencies, too many emotional triggers, too many identities competing for space inside the same nervous system. And eventually, people begin losing the ability to distinguish what they truly think from what they merely absorbed unconsciously. This is why silence feels uncomfortable to many people now, because silence removes distraction. And distraction was hiding fragmentation. Inside silence, unfinished thoughts return. Exhaustion becomes visible. Contradictions become difficult to ignore. And for a moment, there is no audience, no algorithm, no performance. Only the sound of your own consciousness attempting to reconnect with itself again. This is where the protocol begins. Not through domination, not through control over reality, but through reducing internal conflict. The Monolith Protocol is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming internally coherent. Thought aligned with action. Attention aligned with intention. Environment aligned with direction. Because human beings become powerful when their internal systems stop fighting themselves constantly. The modern world rewards speed, but clarity often emerges slowly. The modern world rewards visibility, but internal strength is built quietly. The modern world rewards endless reaction, but the monolith rewards stillness. This is why simplicity becomes powerful again. Not shallow simplicity, refined simplicity, a focused direction, a disciplined environment, a nervous system no longer overloaded by unnecessary noise. And if you have ever experienced even one truly quiet moment where your thoughts finally felt clear again, you already know how rare that has become. The monolith appears simple from the outside, but inside that stillness exists immense structure. The ability to focus deeply, the ability to resist distraction, the ability to remain grounded while surrounded by psychological chaos. This is not perfection. This is stabilization. And stabilization changes everything. Because when the internal signal becomes clear, decision-making becomes cleaner. Attention becomes intentional. Emotion becomes less reactive. Energy stops leaking through contradiction. And slowly, the mind begins feeling integrated again. This is the moment many people have been unconsciously searching for their entire lives. Not endless stimulation, not endless visibility, not endless achievement, but internal congruence. The feeling that thought, identity, behavior, and direction are finally moving together instead of against each other. The Monolith Protocol is not freedom from difficulty. It is freedom from unnecessary internal noise. And in a world engineered to fragment human attention endlessly, that kind of stillness becomes revolutionary. This is the final principle of Phase 1. The strongest minds are not the loudest. They are the most internally aligned. Because when distraction loses its control, human beings begin hearing their real signal again. And once that signal becomes clear, the next challenge begins. How to transform clarity into meaningful execution. Once the internal signal becomes clear, execution becomes the next test. Not chaotic effort, not performative productivity, not endless hustle designed to impress strangers online. Aligned execution. The modern world glorifies movement. Constant posting, constant optimization, constant reaction disguised as progress. But movement alone is not momentum. Many people are exhausted because their systems are fragmented. Their goals compete against their habits. Their attention competes against their priorities. Their environment competes against their focus. And slowly, their energy dissolves into friction. This is where the Apex Protocol begins. Not as domination over reality, but as the removal of unnecessary resistance between thought and action. Because power is not intensity without direction. Power is organized energy. This is the first principle of the Apex Protocol. A clear system multiplies human capability. One aligned idea can generate thousands of meaningful actions when supported by structure. One disciplined workflow can outperform endless motivation. One coherent direction can move farther than years of scattered effort. The modern world often mistakes complexity for intelligence. But complexity without clarity creates collapse. The strongest systems are often simple. Clear inputs, clear priorities, clear execution. This is why simplicity becomes sophisticated at higher levels of performance. Not because life became easier, but because unnecessary friction has been removed. The Apex Protocol sees systems everywhere. Attention systems, behavior systems, creative systems, financial systems, emotional systems. And most people never realize how many invisible systems are quietly shaping the direction of their life every day. Algorithmic feeds shaping thought patterns, notification loops shaping attention spans, digital environments shaping emotional states, social systems shaping identity. This is why intentional architecture matters, because environments amplify behavior, and repeated behavior becomes destiny over time. The Apex Protocol does not seek endless control. It seeks intelligent alignment. The ability to build systems where thought, action, and environment reinforce each other instead of creating resistance. This is where leverage begins, not force. Leverage. A small, disciplined action repeated consistently becomes exponential over time. A focused creator distributing meaningful work through aligned systems can influence millions without destroying their nervous system in the process. This is the second principle of the Apex Protocol. Leverage emerges when friction disappears. Most people try to increase results by increasing force. But sustainable growth rarely comes from force alone. It comes from refinement. Removing unnecessary decisions. Removing unnecessary distraction. Removing unnecessary chaos. Because every unresolved contradiction consumes energy. The modern nervous system is overloaded not only by information, but by constant context switching. Too many tabs open. Too many unfinished loops. Too many competing priorities draining cognitive bandwidth. Some people spend years feeling unproductive, when the real problem is simply that their systems are fighting themselves constantly. The Apex Protocol reduces this internal conflict. One direction, one integrated structure, one increasingly refined signal moving through aligned systems. This is why high-level performers often appear calm externally, not because they experience less pressure, but because their systems absorb complexity without collapsing psychologically. They do not react to everything. They filter carefully. They protect attention deliberately. They understand that focus is leverage. The world now operates at machine speed. Artificial intelligence generates information endlessly. Infinite content, infinite stimulation, infinite opportunities competing for limited human attention. This creates a dangerous illusion that success belongs to whoever produces the most. But volume without refinement creates noise, and noise eventually destroys signal. The future will increasingly belong to people capable of organized execution inside overwhelming complexity. People who can think clearly while others react impulsively. People who can maintain direction while others drown in distraction. People who can build systems strong enough to protect attention from fragmentation. This is the third principle of the Apex Protocol. Clarity scales farther than chaos. The modern world rewards urgency, but meaningful systems are usually built slowly, quietly, repeatedly. A creator refining one powerful framework over years often creates more lasting impact than thousands of impulsive outputs. A disciplined routine compounds. A focused environment compounds. A trustworthy reputation compounds. A coherent body of work compounds. This is how invisible leverage forms over time. Not through dramatic intensity, but through sustained alignment. And if you have ever experienced even one season where your systems finally started supporting your life instead of fighting it, you already know how powerful aligned execution can feel. The Apex Protocol understands something many people never learn. Time is not merely something to spend. It is something to structure carefully. Most people lose enormous amounts of life energy through fragmentation, scrolling without intention, reacting without reflection, consuming without integration, moving constantly without meaningful direction. And eventually, motion replaces progress. The protocol interrupts this cycle. It reduces unnecessary movement. It restores intentionality. It creates systems where effort produces meaningful momentum instead of endless exhaustion. This is not perfectionism. It is intelligent design. The strongest systems are not the most aggressive. They are the most resilient. This is why emotional regulation becomes strategic. Why sleep becomes strategic. Why environment becomes strategic. Why information hygiene becomes strategic. Because performance is never separate from the condition of the nervous system producing it. The modern world teaches optimization without stability. The Apex Protocol begins with stability first. Because sustainable growth requires a system capable of carrying success without self-destruction. And for a moment, everything simplifies. The unnecessary fades. The signal sharpens. The system breathes. Thought becomes clearer. Action becomes cleaner. Progress becomes smoother. Not because life became easy, but because internal friction stopped consuming so much energy. This is the fourth principle of the Apex Protocol. Aligned systems create sustainable momentum. The protocol is not about controlling the world. It is about becoming coherent enough to move through complexity without constant self-interference. This is what true leverage feels like. Not endless force, not endless pressure, but intelligent structure amplifying focused energy over time. And eventually, a deeper realization begins emerging. Execution alone is not enough. The systems must also support a meaningful life. There comes a moment when the noise finally loses its authority. Not because the world stopped accelerating, but because your internal system stopped collapsing every time reality became chaotic. The signal is no longer fragmented. Thought, action, environment, and direction have begun moving together. Not perfectly, but coherently. This is the beginning of neural sovereignty, not domination over reality, not superiority, but the ability to participate in reality without constantly betraying yourself in the process. For most of modern life, human beings exist in contradiction. They think one thing, but live another. They value depth, but feed themselves endless distraction. They want peace, while surrounding their nervous system with constant interruption. And over time, this internal conflict becomes exhaustion. Some people spend years becoming impressive to others, while remaining strangers to themselves. This is why so many people feel disconnected from their own life. Not because they lack intelligence, but because their systems, habits, environments, and identities are constantly pulling against each other. The monolith revealed the signal beneath the noise. The Apex Protocol built systems capable of carrying meaningful direction forward. And now, everything begins integrating into one coherent movement. This changes everything. Decision-making becomes calmer. Attention becomes intentional. Emotion becomes less reactive. Action becomes more precise. The nervous system no longer wastes enormous energy, resisting itself constantly. And slowly, life begins feeling integrated instead of fragmented. This is the first principle of neural sovereignty. A coherent human being moves through reality differently. Not louder, not more aggressive, more intentional. The modern world confuses power with force, but sustainable power rarely feels frantic. It feels stable, like deep water beneath a storm. This is why true clarity often appears quiet externally. The strongest systems rarely need constant performance to prove their strength. They function through alignment. The same becomes true for human beings. When thought aligns with behavior, behavior aligns with environment, and environment aligns with direction. Life begins generating momentum naturally, instead of through endless psychological struggle. This is not mystical thinking. It is systems coherence. Most people spend years fighting themselves without realizing it. Wanting focus while feeding distraction. Wanting peace while consuming outrage. Wanting purpose while scattering attention across endless stimulation. And eventually, their nervous system becomes exhausted by contradiction. Some people are not tired because life is difficult. They are tired because internal conflict became continuous. This is why neural sovereignty is not about escaping reality. It is about reducing the friction between who you are, what you value, and how you actually live. The digital world increasingly rewards fragmentation. Shorter attention, faster reaction, constant stimulation, artificial urgency, algorithmic identity loops, and artificial intelligence will continue accelerating all of it. Infinite content, infinite persuasion, infinite synthetic emotion competing for human attention every second. This creates a future where internal coherence becomes increasingly rare, and therefore increasingly valuable. This is the second principle of neural sovereignty. The future belongs to people capable of protecting their internal signal from external overload, not through isolation, through intentional architecture, carefully chosen environments, carefully chosen inputs, carefully chosen systems. Because what repeatedly enters the nervous system eventually shapes perception itself. This is why attention becomes sacred, not because attention is productivity, but because attention shapes consciousness over time. Every repeated focus strengthens something. Every repeated distraction weakens something else. The modern world teaches people to endlessly consume reality. Neural sovereignty teaches people to consciously participate in shaping it, not by controlling the universe, but by contributing coherent energy into it. A disciplined creator contributes differently. A coherent thinker contributes differently. A calm nervous system changes the atmosphere around it differently. This is how meaningful influence actually spreads, not through domination, through resonance. Human beings naturally trust coherent signals, a coherent voice, a coherent presence, a coherent life. No fragmentation, no desperate performance, no endless emotional volatility, just clarity moving consistently through action. And for a moment, everything becomes still. No urgency, no algorithmic pressure, no endless switching between identities. Only presence, only awareness, only the quiet realization that the life you were searching for was never hidden somewhere outside you. It was buried beneath noise. Sometimes people hear old recordings of themselves, or look at old photographs, and realize how different their inner world once felt before fragmentation became normal, before distraction became identity, before performance replaced presence. This is the third principle of neural sovereignty. Clarity is not created by adding more. It is revealed by removing interference. This is why simplicity becomes powerful again. Not empty simplicity, refined simplicity. A life where priorities are visible, where systems reinforce values, where attention is directed intentionally instead of captured automatically. The modern world often celebrates acceleration without asking what direction people are accelerating toward. But speed without coherence creates collapse. Neural sovereignty restores direction. First, because direction determines whether momentum creates meaning or merely faster confusion. The strongest minds are not those capable of controlling everything. They are those capable of remaining internally stable while surrounded by complexity. This is what the old symbols were always pointing toward. The monolith, the signal, the architect. Not domination over others, but mastery over fragmentation within the self. This is why real sovereignty feels calm, not inflated, not performative, not obsessed with superiority, just deeply integrated. Like every part of the internal system has finally stopped moving against itself. And maybe this is what people were truly searching for all along. Not infinite stimulation, Not endless achievement. Not control over reality itself. Only the feeling of becoming fully present inside their own life again. This is the final truth of neural sovereignty. You do not need to become larger than the world. You only need to become coherent enough that the world no longer constantly fragments your attention, identity, and direction. Because when the internal signal stabilizes, life begins moving differently. The noise loses authority. The unnecessary fades. And the human mind finally becomes capable of creating meaningful impact without destroying itself in the process. The protocol was never about escaping the world. It was about returning to yourself with enough clarity to finally build meaningfully within it. Not as a ruler above reality, but as a conscious human being, fully awake inside it. And once that happens, you begin understanding something the modern world but rarely teaches. A meaningful life is not built through endless reaction. It is built through aligned attention, coherent systems, and intentional participation in reality itself.